Hey folks, and welcome back to Eric in the Kitchen, where this week I'm trying Claire Saffitz's English muffin recipe from Dessert Person. If you're new around here, there are new videos every Tuesday. Be sure to like and subscribe. Okay, so Claire's English muffin recipe is pretty standard with two main differences, the first being honey. It's important to weigh out your honey here because Claire specifies 2 tablespoons, as well as a weight in grams. However, depending on the thickness of your honey, this can actually be twice the volume that she specifies. This was an area that I felt was a little unclear to me, especially in terms of getting the right level of sweetness into the English muffin. The next element that Claire works with most is the milk. So this is standard whole milk, but we'll take it over to the stove and scald it. So let's do that now. Claire tells us that we should take it over to the stove on medium-high heat and heat it up until we see a skin form on top and some light bubbles. This is denaturing the proteins for the English muffin itself. We're going to bring that then down to 105 degrees Fahrenheit after adding the honey and the butter, whisking it all together. So we're bringing all of our ingredients together while hot, and then we're just cooling it down enough that we can add it to the yeast here. This process can take a little bit of a while. It took me about 15 to 20 minutes while whisking. So note that this can take a while, but I trust Claire when she says it provides a better result. So we proof our yeast, letting it get foamy with a little bit of the milk mixture, and then the recipe's pretty simple from here on out. We just put everything together in the bowl of a stand mixer. So that's our flour, our yeast mixture, our milk mixture, and some salt, and let it go from there. This took about 8 to 10 minutes to come together, and I ended up with a fairly firm dough at the end of it. It was supposed to be somewhat sticky according to Claire, so I found that this was where I started to diverge from the recipe, despite following it to the letter. Anyhow, the dough felt a little bready, but I went ahead and put it in a oiled bowl, covered it with the plastic wrap, and then let it sit for the prescribed hour and a half to let it rise. And it rose really effectively here. And in fact, when I took it out, I was surprised at how much it poofed up. It was really, really well proofed. Then the instructions said to pat it down and put it overnight in the fridge, so I patted it down on a baking sheet and got it to about a 1/2 inch consistency throughout, threw it in the fridge overnight, and we'll come back with completely different lighting the next morning when we're ready to actually have breakfast. Okay, so one thing I first noticed coming out of the fridge was that it was a little bit uneven, so I wanted to take a practice shot of cutting these off camera, and I'm glad I did because it took some real practice and some guess and check with the amount of oil needed on the measuring cup to cut them. The basic challenge I found here was a little bit of a crust formed overnight, which made them somewhat harder to cut, and the uneven rise meant that the edges of the English muffins were a bit more difficult to work with. However, once everything was properly covered in oil and enough force was applied, most things worked out pretty well in terms of cutting the English muffins. Then the next step is to go to the stove here, and this is arguably the most complicated process here because working with heats that are very sensitive is something that's always a little tricky. Basically, I fill out the cast iron pan here with the 5 English muffins that eventually fit in it using the best of my Jenga skills, and then turn on the heat over medium-low. Now, Claire prescribes about a medium-low heat, and I found that this was actually too hot, so fortunately, despite lots of checking and constant monitoring, almost all of them ended up burning in well under the time frame that was allotted in the recipe. So one thing to watch out for here. I, off camera or on my Instagram, did a separate batch with a few more. These turned out a little bit better. I still had one that ended up a little bit raw inside, even though it went for the whole time, but it was edible for all the others. This is just the area to be careful with because it's really difficult to get the cook quite right on these English muffins, especially if the sizes aren't quite all the same. Anyhow, after some off-camera trial and error, I eventually had a set of 4 English muffins to start to try to prepare with our fork, which I had conveniently forgotten. So the process to open up an English muffin is to fork all of the sides of it and then tear it open with your hands or with the fork. I ended up getting this down to 3 that were actually workable. The other ones ended up a little still raw in the middle despite being fully cooked on the outside, suggesting that the heat was still a little bit too high. Once this was all done, I started preparing myself a fried egg and some bacon to top these with, and we got down to tasting. These muffins overall were really flavorful, and I was really happy with the flavor I got from them. I'm looking a lot of the time for something that's category defining, like the best chocolate mousse or the best apple pie ever. And these, while maybe not quite being there for the English muffins, were really close. The flavor was exactly what I was going for to pair with a salty breakfast, which is what I tend to do for English muffins. Overall, I thought that this was a solid recipe, and I'll talk a little bit more as you get to watch me playing hockey with uncooked English muffin dough. This recipe I thought was a little bit hard to follow in certain pieces, the inconsistencies with weights versus tablespoons, and especially the difficulties in cooking these properly means that it probably would take me 2 to 3 tries to really nail this recipe. On the other hand, the flavor is about where I'd like it to be for an English muffin, and the texture on the ones that were properly cooked was quite pleasant. It had the nooks and crannies that would work well. So I'd encourage you to give this a shot, and definitely check out Claire's Dessert Person Cookbook. I'll leave a link in the description down below. And let me know what you think. If you try this recipe, please leave a comment. Let me know how you serve your English muffins or what your ideal English muffin is. Ultimately, English muffins can only be a win unless you're like me and burn 75% of them. There's still a 25% win. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed. If you're new around here, please subscribe and don't forget to smash that like button. It makes a big difference for the YouTube algorithm, helps me deliver even better videos every week. We'll see you all next Tuesday.